Hello and welcome to episode number 21 of the Just Flying series. Explain Default Cessna Day today, and we're off to NZNS Nelson Airport. And because we've got the city and a well-lit airfield over there, I thought we'd take the trip with the light fading, as that can look rather pretty sometimes. Although I may have set the time a bit too late looking at this, so rather than twilight it may be pitch black by the time we arrive. Although the extent of my flight planning is knowing roughly which direction to fly in, so we'll find out as we go along. Although at least we shouldn't have to worry about the road in the runway at this airfield. We're going to be airborne before we get to that, and there's a car coming, but yeah, we'd probably have missed that anyway, so yeah, that would have been fine. Right then. So not a lot going on in Flight Sim World to tell you about. I'm working on stuff for a few airfields and upgrades. None of it's finished yet, and you'll get something eventually. That's about all I can say, really. So, as I've not got much to say about Flight Sim World, let's talk about the real world for a bit instead, shall we? Because it was interesting and also a little frightening to see America take a morally and intellectually massive step backwards a few days ago. I mean, the country has been going backwards for years, but that's been slow enough where most people wouldn't have noticed. Taking away a freedom of choice from the population, as happened last week, that's a huge and very noticeable step. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, but just in case, it's no longer a constitutional right to have an abortion in America. And therefore, as I understand it, the separate states can write their own rules about that, which means some of them will ban abortions. Now, this all started quite a few years ago, where the leaders of the cult known as Christianity put something into practice called the wedge strategy. And they have admitted this is true, by the way. And basically, it's slowly placing their own people into positions of power and doing it quietly and without anybody really noticing. So that when there are enough of them to stamp out any opposition, instead of decisions being made using things like facts or for the benefit of the population or even what the majority of people actually want, rules and laws could be made instead in accordance with their holy book. That's the one that tells you about a guy who lies, who cheats, who makes numerous mistakes, who slaughters billions, who condones the rape of children, and owning of other human beings as property, to name but a few. Or God, as they choose to call him. And this is only the start for America now. I mean, religion has taken over the numbers in the Supreme Court with this wedge strategy. And because of that, they are now able to take away freedoms like the right to an abortion, even if the conception was by an incestuous rape, for instance. But they're not stopping there. They have said that they're going to look at contraception, the legality of homosexuality. And these are only the things that they're saying in public. So I dread to think what they're talking about in private and not saying out loud yet. For anyone who is American, that's got to be the scary part. These religious zealots, they are bound to do things which are truly odious and a total disaster from a humanitarian point of view. But I doubt, or at least I hope, that they wouldn't do anything so abhorrent that it causes another civil war there. Although if that did happen, it's not going to come as a major shock. But at very least, America is now heading at very high speed on a backwards trajectory, due to the racist, sexist, bigoted religion being in charge and not a democratic government. So on a global scale, the country is going to slowly become increasingly irrelevant. There are things like the CERN Large Hadron Collider in Geneva. America were once building a bigger and better collider in Texas, but decided it was a bit expensive and abandoned it halfway through. So that bit of scientific research with particle colliders is now no longer in America but in Europe. And there are other examples too where things which were traditionally based in the US are starting to slowly spread out to other parts of the world, or are being overtaken by bigger and better projects in other countries. America has begun a journey to irrelevance, and with the leaders of the magic invisible man in the sky cult now having power, that's not going to stop. Those people control the faithful and actively discourage them from thinking. Again, something they do admit to. Which means that the brainwashed are not able to comprehend the bigger picture or where this is taking them, or even be able to recognise the hypocrisy in their religion. And it will get worse. When I was young, there were two great superpowers, the US and the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed, and Russia by itself holds nowhere near the same amount of power that it used to. The disunited States of America will slowly join them in that, which leaves an interesting power vacuum behind. The Islamic states are big enough where they could in theory come together as one big power, but I can't see that happening. Islam, Christianity, they are the same thing, where people at the top have power, and to keep that power they subjugate the masses. So that would just never work with all of the individual religious leaders coming together into a united entity, because some of those leaders would have to voluntarily give up some or all of their power, and that's not going to happen. But the entity which is working is China, and probably should be called a superpower right now. Hong Kong has been absorbed into the mainland. There's every chance Taiwan will follow one day, but apart from that, they haven't shown signs of wishing to expand their territory, although they probably don't need to. They are capable right now of exerting influence over many places, so that China benefits economically in terms of power, etc. And as Russia and America continue to become weaker and less relevant, China then does become the one and only global superpower. And as the saying goes, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Just think of someone who did have a form of absolute power, at least over his own population, Adolf Hitler and the whole Nazi thing. So to counter that, I see a time where Europe is going to need to get its act together. I don't know if that would be under the heading of the European Union or NATO, or maybe some brand new hybrid of the two. But a Euro-NATO alliance kind of thing probably does have the ability to be the biggest superpower of the lot and keep everybody else in check. Now, Germany are one of the largest and arguably the number one major player in Europe, and it would therefore follow the same thing would happen within a Euro-NATO superpower alliance or whatever it may be. And to me, Germany's influence would be a very good thing. With their experience of having done it before and knowing the negative consequences of it, if there is one country on this entire planet I would trust most of all to not go down the route of corrupted power and Nazism again, it's the Germans. All this is a few years down the road yet, and will it ever happen? I don't know. Russia has huge reserves of fossil fuels, which we will stop or at least cut down on using, and they're going to need a major rethink of their economy, and if spending on the war machine to invade places like Ukraine is better than investing in agriculture or other commodities that you can sell, for instance. America will probably die quicker in terms of being a world power as religion continues to wind the country's evolutionary clock backwards. But money isn't going to be an issue for them, as the church and the government will entwine with each other more and more, and as we know, the church has always been very successful at relieving the gullible of their money. So that leads me to think that, well, right now there is a small community called the Amish, who follow very strict lives, reject the modern world and technology, and I'm sure you've seen them. I'd be willing to bet that they keep to their own community, in part because deep down they know that if they tried to spread the word and preach about their lifestyle, most people would not be that fucking stupid as to live like that. So they're just this weird little group of people who do their own thing in the middle of Pennsylvania. And in exactly the same way, America is now heading towards being that weird country somewhere between Canada and Mexico, who probably won't get involved with things outside of America too much. As if they did, then the masses might start learning things and start seeing how much better some other countries are when they're run by governments and not religions. So with them out of the way, does China need to expand to become more powerful? And if not, then does a European superpower need to exist either? Or is all of that irrelevant anyway, and we're too far gone down the road of one of the answers to the Fermi paradox? The one where advanced civilizations advance to a point where they destroy themselves. Perhaps not in wars or conflicts or anything like that. Maybe just to a point where something like climate change or another COVID-like pandemic, but with a much more lethal virus, things like that, which means that the planet evolves and we don't evolve quick enough to keep up with it. Other species no doubt will, and life will go on for them, but for humans we simply join the list of millions of extinct species who have populated the pale blue dot for a short period of time and then faded away and became nothing more than a part of its history. They say life is short, and it certainly is compared to planets in the universe. In just the blink of an eye next to them, and none of the numerous heavens and hells are real, so there's no such thing as eternity, fortunately. So these brief few years I have on this planet is all that I have and all I ever will have. Which means that I think it's important that while I'm here, I try to make a positive difference if I can. I'm not in a position to be able to make big changes to end world hunger or anything like that, but you don't have to do everything. Just do something. Even if that's making someone's day a little brighter by making a new airport scenery for them to fly to, or occasionally being that guy who sometimes rambles off on strange thinking out loud monologues during his YouTube videos. Although I can definitely be an arsehole too at times, and sometimes I'm very, very good at it, but if my life can end with it being a tiny net positive effect on the world, then I've done okay, and I've certainly done better than any religion ever has. But then again, trying to be better than a religion, that's not exactly hard, is it? It's not really a very high bar that they've set to try and beat. Let's land a plane, shall we? I felt like it was smooth enough. This is going to be way too dark to see anything anyway. Try and get the terminal in the background. Yeah, that was fairly pointless, wasn't it? Never mind. Right, so welcome to NS Nelson Airfield. Oh, nearly forgot, by the way. If you have my NZDV Dannevirke scenery, something I noticed recently was I've no idea how it got in there or what I've done, but there's an exclusion zone quite a long way north of Dannevirke, which cuts out a load of trees. Now, after I've managed to find that out, I have repaired that scenery and uploaded it again to my mega folder. So if you do have NZDV, it's definitely worth throwing away the copy that you've got and going to get the new one out of the mega folder. Or if you did fly north of there, you're going to run into the same thing which I did, which is a very large square where there's no vegetation, and it will all look a bit weird. I'll go and park up here, and this is the joys of making airfields, as I know this parking spot is always free, though it's not an official spawning point, so you never get any AI aircraft here, so I've always got somewhere to park. Yeah, that's probably near enough. So that was our little visit to NZNS Nelson Airfield. And I'm sure we'll be back with something else in the not too distant future, so until then, see you soon. Bye.